Yet real cities are mentioned, real rulers are mentioned, real events are mentioned. And so when I was cross-referencing all of them, I started to put them all together and recreate the timeline of this ancient world.
I think we're looking again at a lost technology, and it was this ancient apocalypse 12,800 years ago that wiped that.
For decades, ancient history has been treated as a closed book. The broad outline is familiar. Civilization emerged gradually, knowledge accumulated slowly, and complex societies appeared only after long periods of trial and error. According to this view, myths are symbolic stories, not records of real events, and advanced ancient cultures are largely a modern misunderstanding. But that assumption begins to unravel when myths are examined not in isolation, but collectively. Across the ancient world, stories that are dismissed as allegory repeatedly reference real cities, real rulers, and real catastrophes. When these accounts are cross-referenced rather than studied separately, they begin to form a coherent narrative, one that suggests humanity's past may be far older, far more advanced, and far more turbulent than modern timelines allow. This investigation begins in an unexpected place, eastern Turkey, at a massive inland body of water known as Lake Van. Lake Van is not an ordinary lake. It is the largest soda lake on Earth, highly alkaline, saline, and without any natural outlet. Over thousands of years, minerals have accumulated in its waters, creating unusual geological formations called microbiolites, which rise like stone chimneys from the lakebed. It was these formations that first drew divers to the lake. In 2017, during a routine underwater filming expedition, a veteran diver and videographer made an accidental discovery. While documenting microbiolites near the northern shore of Lake Van, he encountered something that did not belong there: stone walls, cut blocks, and architectural remains lying deep beneath the surface. What emerged was the deepest confirmed underwater ruin site ever identified. The structures are scattered across a wide area, ranging from roughly 30 to 75 feet below the surface. They are not natural formations. The stones are angular, deliberately placed, and made of hard volcanic materials such as andesite, stone that is extremely difficult to shape even with modern tools. This immediately raises a fundamental question. Lake Van has not always been this deep. If these structures were built on dry land, then the lake level must have risen dramatically after their construction. That implies a major environmental or climatic event, one powerful enough to flood an entire region. The implications extend further. One of the most striking features of these submerged ruins is the presence of carved symbols. On a surviving capstone, two markings remain clearly visible. One is a six-petaled rosette, closely resembling what later cultures would call the flower of life. Beside it is a counterclockwise spiral. A third symbol appears to have existed but has been worn away over time. These markings are not isolated. The same symbols appear at sites thousands of miles away, in ancient Egypt, in South America, and across the Near East. Their repetition suggests shared knowledge, shared symbolism, and potentially shared origin. The probability of independent invention across so many distant cultures becomes increasingly difficult to defend. Lake Van, long overlooked in mainstream archaeology, begins to look less like a peripheral site and more like a missing center. On land, near the lake's eastern and southern shores, are massive stone complexes that defy conventional explanation. One of the most significant is a site known as Yonkatepe. Built from andesite, basalt, and alabaster, the structure exhibits levels of precision that rival or exceed those seen in Egypt or Peru. Archaeology officially attributes these ruins to the Urartian civilization, dating them to around 2,800 years ago. But this explanation quickly breaks down under closer inspection. The Urartians are known primarily for mud brick fortifications and surface-level construction. At these sites, the mud brick layers sit on top of far older, far more advanced stonework. The stone beneath tells a different story. Symbols carved into these structures include a distinct solar cross, a perfectly proportioned cross enclosed within a circle. This symbol appears repeatedly throughout the ancient world and later emerges as one of the most guarded emblems in medieval Europe. It becomes the emblem of the Knights Templar, an organization that would later be systematically destroyed by the Church. The connection is unsettling. If the solar cross at Lake Van predates the Templars by thousands of years, then the symbol did not originate in medieval Europe. It was inherited, passed down, preserved without full understanding of its origin. Even today, a variation of this same cross appears in the highest levels of religious authority, worn openly, yet rarely questioned. The stonework itself deepens the mystery. At several sites around Lake Van, symbols are carved across multiple stone blocks, as if the carvings were made after the blocks were already set in place. This would require absolute precision. The stones involved rate between 7 and 7.5 on the Mohs hardness scale. Modern stonemasons acknowledge that replicating such work would be extraordinarily difficult, even with advanced machinery. Yet there are no tool marks, no evidence of trial and error, no visible mistakes. In one area, a T-shaped pillar carved from solid basalt weighs approximately 7 tons. The central cut in the pillar measures exactly 12 inches. Measurements taken across the structure reveal ratios that align with early mathematical constants. Some markings appear to have been laid out using circular geometry, suggesting the use of compasses or advanced planning techniques. Nearby, fragments of large stone reliefs lie scattered across the landscape. During a guided exploration, a participant overturned a loose piece of basalt and discovered a carved fragment depicting the lower leg of a lion. The fragment matched perfectly with an intact relief still standing at the site. These pieces are not museum artifacts. They are still embedded in the landscape, exposed, unprotected, and largely undocumented. The deeper researchers look, the clearer a pattern becomes. A distinctive architectural blueprint repeats across the globe. Stepped platforms arranged in 3 levels. This design appears near Lake Van. It appears in Peru at Ollantaytambo, where water flows over a 3-tiered stone structure. It appears in Saudi Arabia, carved directly into mountain faces. It appears in Cambodia in isolated temples that archaeologists quietly acknowledge do not fit the dominant cultural timeline. At Pumapunku in Bolivia, the same geometry reappears, merged with T-shaped doorways. At Tiwanaku's Gate of the Sun, 3 doorways dominate the structure, with the central opening emphasized above the others. These are not decorative choices. Across cultures, the same symbolism emerges. 3 levels representing 3 realms. Earth below, the heavens above, and a central threshold, the point of transition between them. The repeated emphasis on the central doorway suggests a focus on balance, alignment, and passage. This symbolism extends into later religious art. In Leonardo da Vinci's The Last Supper, Christ is positioned precisely in front of a central doorway, flanked by 2 others. The composition mirrors ancient layouts found thousands of years earlier. The continuity is difficult to dismiss as coincidence. The same continuity appears in ancient texts. One of the oldest known written records, the myth of Adapa, describes the creation of humanity not as a primitive beginning, but as a deliberate act. Adapa is described as possessing intelligence, wisdom, and authority, so much so that he is called the most wise among the Anuna, the beings later known as the Anunnaki. This text does not describe humanity as a crude experiment. It describes humanity as something extraordinary. Other traditions echo this theme. Across Mesopotamia, Egypt, Mesoamerica, India, and Greece. Civilizing figures appear suddenly, bring advanced knowledge, establish cities, teach agriculture, astronomy, and mathematics, and then disappear. Enki, Prometheus, Quetzalcoatl, Viracocha, Hermes. Different names, same role. They are always described as bearers of knowledge, often associated with serpents or dragons, symbols later inverted and demonized by monotheistic traditions. These myths may not be fantasies, they may be memories of a world that ended. Geological and climatological evidence indicates that Earth has experienced repeated, violent transitions. Ice core data from Greenland and Antarctica reveals abrupt temperature spikes, followed by catastrophic cooling events. During the transition from the last ice age, mammoths were flash frozen with undigested food still in their throats. Trees were found frozen with green leaves intact hundreds of miles north of where trees could survive. Such events were not gradual, they were sudden. At multiple ancient sites, stone structures show signs of vitrification. Rock surfaces melted into glass. Basalt requires temperatures approaching 2,000 degrees to vitrify. These conditions cannot be explained by conventional fires or lightning strikes. They suggest extreme electromagnetic or atmospheric events on a planetary scale. Strikingly, vitrification appears most often at megalithic sites built from highly magnetic stone, as if these locations acted like lightning rods during global disasters. Then abruptly, construction stopped. Across Egypt, Easter Island, China, Lebanon, and Turkey, massive projects were abandoned mid-construction. The largest obelisk in Egypt was left unfinished. The largest moai on Easter Island was never moved. At Baalbek, stones weighing over 1,000 tons remain in the quarry. Civilizations at the height of their capabilities do not simply stop building unless something forces them to. Survival may have moved underground. In central Turkey lie vast subterranean cities such as Derinkuyu and Kaymakli. These complexes descend dozens of levels underground, complete with ventilation shafts, water access, food storage, living quarters, and massive stone doors designed to seal entire levels against flooding or invasion. A tunnel nearly 5.5 miles long connects two of these cities beneath the surface. These were not temporary shelters. They were designed for long-term habitation, possibly across generations. Their existence suggests anticipation, knowledge that catastrophic events would return. Mainstream history treats these structures as anomalies, but viewed together, they form a pattern. A technologically sophisticated civilization may have existed far earlier than accepted timelines suggest. It may have been global, it may have shared knowledge across continents, and it may have been destroyed by forces beyond its control, leaving fragments of its understanding encoded in stone, myth, and symbol. What remains is not proof of gods or aliens, but evidence of something far more unsettling. Humanity may not be starting from nothing. We may be remembering.